57% on Rotten Tomatoes. Widely held by fans of the series as the worst installment. Jar Jar Binks. Bobby has the unenviable task of defending Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Let's start in defense of bad movies. Hello, my name is Sam Bowen. I'm here with Lauren McJanet-Taylor.
Hi, Sam.
Laura King.
Hi.
And Bobby Mattern.
Hello.
And we are in defense of bad movies. Basically, what we do here is we take a movie that is widely considered bad, and at least one member of the group likes it and plans to defend it, and then most likely the rest of us will tell him how stupid he is and how stupid the movie is. So, this being our episode 1, we decided to do Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. I think it's pretty widely accepted as the worst Star Wars, right? Well, Episode 2 doesn't. People don't like that either.
Badness arguments could be made for years on all the prequels, but bad is certainly
It was certainly
unarguable.
disappointing, right?
Yeah.
After...
I think to say people consider it disappointing is fair, but I don't know that...
Okay. That's fair.
Okay.
So we have decided the way we're going to work the show is we're going to start with our opening arguments, and the prosecution gets to go first, and Lauren has decided, or we've elected Lauren to go first. So let's kind of remind us why this movie is so bad.
Thank you, Sam. Is this a good movie? No. But what makes this so much more than a terrible regular bad movie is the context. If you could all remember back, just journey back with me now, back to May of 1999. Our young hearts, raised on the magic and the adventure of the original Holy Trilogy, if you will, were filled with such hope. We flocked to cinemas drawn by the promise of a new Star Wars movie. We went with faith and trust, and 2 hours and 16 minutes later, how far we had fallen. To have our faith rewarded with such a convoluted, overblown, ill-inspired, messy noise of a film, air quotes around it. Such a breach of trust elevates this movie from simply bad to utterly offensive. Now, we will show evidence, copious evidence, proving that this inherent badness of this film, but above all, there are 3 things that I want you to remember. When the defense starts talking, he will use terms like conceptual design and fight choreography. But just remember these 3 things, and they will completely negate any merit that may be argued for this film. And these 3 things are Jar Jar Binks, Jake Lloyd, and midichlorians. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And Bobby, what have you... Well, actually, first I have to say, 1999, it's been 15 years.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my God.
You're old is the answer.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So what do you have to say, Bobby?
Well, it's probably not the best way to start a defense, but I will go out and say there are 3 things in this movie that are completely indefensible, and I will not even try. And that is the incredible racism in this movie. It's shocking when you watch it, and reading some sort of defenses of the Phantom Menace online. More than one of them said that you have to read really far into the movie to find the racism. It's right there on the surface. It's incredible. And when I was younger, the Trade Federation especially, watching it now just blows me away. So I'm not even going to try. Jar Jar Binks. Going into watching this movie, I thought, he's probably not as bad as I remember him. He's worse. Yes, and he's in so many scenes, I can't defend Jar Jar Binks. And I will say the other thing I will not defend is C-3PO and his role and his presence in this movie. I would say, though, that C-3PO makes little enough of an impression in this movie that he doesn't do any egregious harm to the movie, but there's no defending his placement sort of in the Star Wars universe.
So, I mean, he was annoying in the first 3, in 4, 5, and 6, really. I mean, not uber annoying, but he was annoying. So, but that's not your...
No, I would say that The outrageous idea that Darth Vader built C-3PO.
Which, by the way, does that make Luke Skywalker and C-3PO brothers?
Oh my gosh, I never thought of that.
Mind blown. But I think we're giving him too much credit. Little Anakin is supposed to be a prodigy at building things, but how would all the protocol droids look identical? There's clearly some build your own
there's a kit.
There is, because where does he get that model number from?
Yeah.
That was another thing that kind of...
He went down to the Tashi station or whatever and bought a kit, right? Okay, so we agree on that. Yeah.
But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Or maybe putting myself behind by starting with things that are bad about this movie. Because even though I'm defending this movie, I am not so ignorant as to say that this movie's perfect and there's nothing wrong with it. There's plenty wrong with it. But I would actually go back to the context and say that in 1999, anticipation was so high for Star Wars, and Star Wars had ingrained itself so deeply into our pop culture, as it still is very deeply ingrained in our pop culture, that it was at that point impossible for George Lucas to release a movie that was going to meet anyone's expectations. And for him to release a movie as flawed as The Phantom Menace just kind of, I think, inflamed all of those sore points in the movie, to the point where I think it gets dumped on a lot more than it probably should have. I think it's miles above the other prequels. But
even 2? Well, I mean, I'm sorry. No,
I would say especially 2. Yeah, I would say 2 is the worst Star Wars movie. I misunderstood
what you were saying. Sorry.
With excluding the Clone Wars animated movie that came out, 2's definitely the worst, I think.
Well, I think his biggest flaw was deciding to do prequel to the trilogy and not just doing ones after the trilogy. You know, not sequel, because I guess sequel would be the second one. And since there's 3 of them, you know, it's like after that, since now in 2014, they're doing another one after the fact. I think that was his biggest fault, was doing a prequel to a movie made in the original was in the 70s. And, you know, in 1999, things looked a lot different on film. And so everything, you just couldn't, I think no one could suspend their disbelief that, oh yeah, this is happening before the ones made in the 70s.
Well, going to kind of the expectations of a prequel to Star Wars, things that fans would have wanted, obviously the sort of rise and fall of Anakin Skywalker and his transformation into Darth Vader, which this movie barely touches upon. Anakin is a little kid.
No, because you don't even know. And I'm guessing in the second and third one you know more about him turning into Darth Vader, because in the first one you're like, oh,
well, we'll leave it. We should probably get out of the way. Laura has only seen of the prequels, The Phantom Menace.
You know, actually, I'm sorry, you're still doing your...
I mean, we can go right ahead.
First, I did actually skip order. One of the things I wanted to do before the opening arguments was talk about everyone's experience before we just rewatched it. Mm-hmm. So, do you want to briefly talk about that real quick?
Sure.
Lauren?
I can go ahead, mine. Sure, I, of course, was a big fan of the original trilogy, and only saw Phantom Menace once when it originally came out into theaters, and so I did have a scope of years to come back to it, to recenter.
Okay. And how about you, Bobby?
I've watched the original trilogy countless times. I owned a VHS copy of Phantom Menace and watched that a few times. Attack of the Clones, I think I've seen twice, and Revenge of the Sith I've seen twice.
And Laura, what was your experience before this?
Well, I recently saw the first and the second Star Wars in the original trilogy, and not until we decided to do this podcast did I realize I had seen The Phantom Menace, but I'd fallen asleep in it because it was that boring. So I have very little experience with the whole Star Wars world, but I don't think I need a lot of it to realize that this is a terrible, shitty movie.
No, and as for me, I grew up watching Star Wars just like everyone else. I've seen them, like you said, countless times. And I remember when Episode 1 came out, I did not hate it. It was fun, and it was...
Did you watch Phantom Menace right away? Or did you kind of get all of the feedback from everyone else and then go watch it?
It opened... I think I saw it the week after it opened, so I must have gotten some sort of feedback. So yeah, my expectations might have been significantly
My expectations when I watched it, I had watched it maybe a month after it came out, and all I heard from my friends was that it was really, really terrible. And when I watched it, I thought, oh, that wasn't as bad.
That's true, that always helps.
That'll make a big difference.
Such low expectations.
Yeah.
Oh.
So,
but kind of going back to what Laura was saying, with the expectations, what you kind of want out of a Star Wars prequel, you want the rise and fall of Anakin Skywalker, which this movie sets up. We don't expect him to kind of be, this Jedi in this movie, at least with what they give us. And so I don't think it's a flaw that we don't get more Anakin in this movie. But
Especially with Jake Lloyd.
Well, okay, why don't they just show him in teenage years? I mean,
they do, Laura.
Why?
Just wait for it.
No,
They
I
do.
know.
But
But
that's how
why
the story
start him
begins.
as a little boy?
Just to show his innocence
Just
and his
to
vulnerability,
to
and we
show
all start somewhere.
how awkward it is that he
Hitler
and
was a boy
Natalie
at some
Portman
point.
are gonna
Oh, it's super
hook
creeps.
up.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a little weird.
Yeah,
It is kind of weird.
it's just so odd. I mean, she probably was late teens in this movie.
Let's argue that maybe she's supposed to be late teens. That Queen Amidala would be that age.
Because if she's in her early 30s now, and 15 years ago, she was in her late teens.
Well,
so,
okay, so I'm sure this is well documented somewhere in some Star Wars wiki, but I would assume that Queen Amidala is about 16, and Anakin Skywalker is about 10, 9 or 10.
She's a wise 16.
Yes, and he is, well, okay, he's a very smart 9 or 10-year-old.
He is presented as a very smart 9 or 10-year-old.
Like the script told us.
Yes.
Yeah. He built C-3PO.
I would like to, before I go any further,
Uh-huh.
Jake Lloyd's acting, his performance in this movie is all sorts of just awkward, terrible, but I find a really hard time putting that all on him, because I think he's an incredibly poorly directed child actor.
This
And
will be fair. Oh, what were you gonna?
I was just going to agree. The directing and George Lucas makes good actors bad.
Yes.
Yes, he does.
Historically, we all know that he
And if you
gives horrible directions.
If you look back at the original trilogy, Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher both have a ton of just really spotty, weird line deliveries. And I think there are very few actors who are immune to George Lucas's direction.
Which is fair.
Yeah.
And I would argue that 2 of them are in this movie. So
Only 2?
driving it back. I think that another thing that we all kind of expected and wanted from the prequel trilogies was seeing Jedi, real Jedi, because you kind of start to see a glimpse of it in Return of the Jedi. You get you get 3 lightsaber battles really in the original trilogy. You get Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader, and it's awesome. That's just one of the greatest moments in Star Wars history. But as far as, it's 2 old guys waving sticks at each other. And I'm not trying to belittle it, but it's meant to be a shadow of what true Jedi battles were. And then you get Luke, who's inexperienced, fighting Darth Vader in Empire. And then you get Luke and Darth Vader fighting each other in Return of the Jedi, which is supposed to be closer to kind of like what Jedi Knights fighting each other were like. And I think one thing that Phantom Menace really does fulfill is it gives you a true experienced Jedi Knight as, I would say, your central character, which is Qui-Gon Jinn. Mm-hmm. And I think Qui-Gon Jinn is a really great character. Were you going to say something?
I will allow that. I'll actually say that for as terrible as actors end up in George Lucas films, like, Liam Neeson's such a badass. He's actually doing a great job.
And he's giving a legitimately very good performance in this movie, I think.
He aside from the fact that he can't make eye contact with Jar Jar Binks, which isn't his fault, he really held.
And I'm going to say that Qui-Gon not making eye contact with Jar Jar Binks is a deliberate character choice.
Okay. He's like, you're beneath me. I'm not going to look at your eyes.
Oh, you think George Lucas allows people to make character choices? Oh.
I'm pretty sure that Liam Neeson only wanted to be in one of them because he saw how bad the final product was, so he made George Lucas kill his character off.
I'd like to add this.
Spoiler alert.
But I think kind of getting this sense, Jedi Knight, who's very experienced. I feel like we can all get behind him. He makes really interesting choices. It's interesting how he interacts with the Queen, with Obi-Wan, and just following his journey through this movie and then having him die at the very end is kind of an interesting setup to, like, we're going to see the Jedi Knights fall in this trilogy and feeling the loss of Qui-Gon at the end, who I think is the hero of our movie.
Yeah.
Was a really interesting choice. Obi-Wan, I also thought is a good. He's played out very well in this movie, and I think Ewan McGregor does a pretty good job in this movie, and he continues to do a good job throughout the rest of them.
I think he suffers under George Lucas' direction as well, but he's trying his hardest, and he does an amazing Alec Guinness impression. So
I think that you're just going off of bad actors and good actors, and the 2 that stand above the other ones are Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor.
Oh, we will discuss everyone else.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like, that's why you think that they're good characters, but they're not. I mean, I don't know. Coming from it is, I don't know.
I don't think the characters are flawed.
And I think Obi-Wan takes a lot of flack in the rest of the prequels for being a very smug kind of character. And I would say that that's fair. But having Obi-Wan, who's the kind of the sage character in the original trilogy, having him be this kind of young, smug character, it's kind of an interesting jumping point for what's to come in the rest of the trilogy.
And all the darkness that would have made
he's got a big fall.
Seeing him more in like almost like a Luke Skywalker role in this movie is interesting.
He gets the snappy one-liners. I think negotiations have failed.
That is pretty snappy. That's pretty...
And I think a fault, and I would say that Ewan McGregor, as the trilogies progress, we're not going to talk about the other prequels, but as that trilogy progresses, Obi-Wan doesn't grow as much as we'd want him to as a character, but I think Ewan McGregor does his darndest. He does. He certainly gets a beard. Yeah. He does his darndest, in spite of George Lucas's directing and his script.
You can see it. He's trying to work.
Can we agree that anything good out of this movie is despite George Lucas?
I think that must be so.
I'm going to give George Lucas credit right now.
Really?
He created
and I'm going to offer up my first controversial opinion about the Star Wars universe, which is that I think Emperor Palpatine, or Senator Palpatine here, is at his most compelling in this movie. Palpatine has always been... I've never found him a very compelling character, and when he comes around in Return of the Jedi, he's just a really boring big bad character.
He's just evil.
He's just a step above Darth Vader, because we can't have Darth Vader be the big bad in Return of the Jedi. And watching him manipulate both sides in this movie makes him a very interesting character.
I want that to be true. I think you're right. Right now he's very Richard the 30th. He is scheming for the throne, and that's a fair statement, And in the hands of a more adept storyteller, we could really enjoy it.
And I will admit that in the following movies, that falls apart, and Palpatine just becomes a cartoon character. He's the worst. But,
No.
But here, where his Darth Sidious is very underplayed, and you see Senator Palpatine play Amidala without being an outright villain to her, it's very interesting. I think it's more dynamic of a villain than Star Wars movies usually get, even. I'm not saying he's anywhere as cool as Darth Vader, because Darth Vader's the best. But, yeah, so I think Palpatine is more interesting than anyone gives him credit for in this movie. We should probably bring up Darth Maul, I think without a crazy marketing push for Darth Maul, we'd be a lot more forgiving of that character, who was set up to be the new Darth Vader and gets killed at the end of the movie.
Okay, so you think it's just a mishandling. If he'd just been this cool, subtle thing we don't really talk about much.
Yeah.
I like Darth Maul.
And I thought Darth Maul was great. I would actually say I think he speaks too much. They give him one conversation.
They do.
And I think he would be so much more of an interesting character if he didn't speak at all.
I'd forgotten that he had that conversation. I'm like, wait, he does talk in this.
I think that's right. I think even the talking's a little bit of a spur, and probably you're right, the over-marketing, that I want to know Darth Maul's story. What's he about? Where's his prequel movie? Why did he come to this? And, if he'd just been entirely mute and crazy assassin, it would have been a lot more compelling. That's absolutely fair. And I will grant you that the fight scene is absolutely beautiful.
It's great.
That's what you wanted when you...
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, when you saw the old men fighting, you're like, no, this is what I want to see.
And even as much as, the only thing you can say is this movie is cobbled together moments of cool in between just terrible, unbearable story, the fight scene really is lovely.
And a note on that fight scene, the Duel of the Fates music cue that John Williams gives in that scene is one of the best Star Wars pieces.
Talking about the music for days.
in both trilogies. I think Duel of the Fates is up there. It's great.
I would agree with that.
How does the music go again, Sam?
Da 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 da.
Yeah,
da, da. So we agree Liam Neeson and John Williams can walk away from this with their head held high.
John Williams sticks around for a couple movies and loses it.
I certainly don't want to blame John Williams, but another part of my experience of this movie was just, it's too much of everything. George Lucas has this new fancy CGI technology, and it's gonna over-inundate you. Your eyes are just gonna fall out from all the visual stimulation. And the same thing with the score. Even though it's a continuation of the style from the first movies, the score, for the most part, is just overbearing.
But I would argue, though, that the score is overbearing in the
I know
original
stylistically,
trilogy.
yeah, and that's fair. But just like, because this movie is always suffering, it's like the characters are sitting down to dinner and chatting. We don't need to have sweeping music behind, like.
And so you'd rather just watch and chat. You enjoyed those scenes.
Everything is too much.
Music.
The only time it was quiet was during the pod race, and that's because we had all of the really cool sound effects going.
And I will argue that pod race goes on too long.
I would agree.
Oh my God.
I would say, though, I think that the pod race, while it could be cut in half the length, I think it's very exciting. It gives Anakin something to do.
It's pretty.
In that it shows.
Jake Lloyd just looks like he's having fun playing a video game.
Certainly
But
looks like he's playing
Anakin
a video
looks
game.
competent.
Yeah, exactly.
Looks too calm. We're told continually how Anakin is
Yeah.
riddled with fear. You watch him in the pod race, no reactions. This kid has no sense of danger or of like personal consequence.
I think his fear comes more for people in his life. We do see, or we are told, I don't want to say that we see it, we are told that he's very concerned about his mother. And we're left to assume that will come into play later on.
Yeah.
But I don't think, as far as personal danger, Anakin has any worries.
I just think there are moments. You guys probably all know the Patton Oswalt joke where he's talking to George Lucas in the past. Imagine, like, oh, you're going to see Anakin as a little kid. Oh, awesome. Is he like this evil Damien Omen kid? And George Lucas answers, no, he's just a little kid. He loses his mom. He's very sad. I would argue that there's an element to this movie that's, no, this kid is, like, creepily calm during moments of great personal danger. He reacts like a sociopath to certain things. Like, you are not giving the normal emotional reaction that you would give.
These people are in the pod racing, and they're literally blowing up right by him, and he's not affected at all.
And we know that it's probably just bad directing. I think that there's an element to this kid is just already a little bit evil.
When in episodes 2 and 3 we see that he's pretty reckless.
Yeah, no, and then at the end when he takes the ship he goes and it blows up that huge ship. I mean, those are people. I mean, I'm sorry, but I mean, I know that they're not good, but like he just destroyed an entire
as a child and was not phased.
And that was an accident.
An accident, and
I would argue that it would be probably better and more interesting if he had done it deliberately rather than
oops.
And you can tell George Lucas really thought pod racing was going to be a huge thing when Anakin yells the line, "Now this is pod racing."
20 years later, the Disneyland ride finally comes around and gives it something.
It's working.
For the most part, it's a huge audience of people watching cars drive by for a second and then watching the rest of the thing on their iPads.
And the announcing. I hated the
announcing's really terrible.
All due respect to Greg Proops. That was horrible.
Yeah, no, it was terrible. It didn't fit in with Star Wars in the slightest. It's just...
It didn't even fit in with original Star Tours. That would have been too much for that even.
Going back to the visual stimulus in the movie, I think that Phantom Menace actually does maintain a certain sense of wonder. Like when you go underwater to Naboo, or not Naboo, but the Gungan homeworld, when you see that for the first time, it looks really cool.
Yeah,
and when you put it back into the context of
there's always a bigger
time,
fish.
1999, we weren't all sick of CGI yet. And I would say that a lot of the CGI in this movie actually works. And all the sets feel very lived in. It doesn't always feel like they're in front of a green screen. I would say rarely does it feel like they're in a green screen. They're interacting with CGI characters. And as we saw with the Yoda puppet, and I would say the Trade Federation too, the puppets didn't really work in this movie as well as I think like the Gungans or the droids did as far as how they looked.
So the Trade Federation, were they puppets?
Yeah, they were.
They were, okay.
We weren't not clear.
Their mouths do not...
There's no reason for their mouths to not sync if they weren't puppets.
Well, I thought that was a stylistic thing. Because they were so Asian, I thought he was going for like a Hong Kong chop suey type thing.
Like a kung fu film.
Yeah, like see how the lips don't sync? It's just like...
Should we talk about the federations? Should we go over that?
No. Well, sure. Obviously, this movie is big on trade. And that's very important. And that's why I loved it so much, because I have a big passion for trade.
It's the first in our little introduction. Taxation of trade routes to the outlying star system is highly in dispute. Ooh, we're in for a corker of a film if we're discussing trade routes.
Something I noticed about the prequels, speaking of that, is they load a lot of information into that opening credits scroll.
Oh, yeah.
Or if you don't pay attention, you're lost for the first 10 minutes of the movie.
While we were watching, was like, no, we're going back and rewinding. I have to make sure I get every moment of these words because this is too much. And I have two things happening at once during this film. George Lucas made, it's all a flimsy mechanism to get these people together and into the movie, but the choice to have the Trade Federation and they're, fighting the people skirting the trade laws, that's a boring, bureaucratic choice for a movie. But at the same time, I have so many questions about how this world works. I want to know how the Senate and the Trade Federation interact. Why does the Trade Federation have an army? How is this galaxy run? And those aren't answered. But I'm given, little snatches of information that are frustrating in their incompleteness.
Though a lot of wars, though, are about...
And that's fine.
About money.
You're right, and that's fine.
But maybe we didn't...
Because we understand what... And then how does their world work? Why is the Federation now going to invade Naboo? Obviously Palpatine has, ulterior motives. He's going to spur them to do it, and then he's going to be able to work his way into leader of the Senate. But what do they think? What does the Trade Federation think their purpose for invading Naboo is? It's never clear what they hope to get.
Yeah.
Is Naboo a notorious, outlet for pirates, and they're skirting, the trade system? Or it's never said. There is...
And it didn't seem like it.
No, it certainly didn't.
Yeah.
There's a lot of information and not enough at the same time.
I would actually agree with that. I think the Trade Federation plot is there to show Palpatine manipulating his way through it.
And everything, all the plot points are so just facile, little, not fully fledged out, just as mechanisms to further this bit.
Yeah. And I would say, yes, I think attention is paid sometimes to the wrong parts of that plot, when it should just be, it should be very simplified, and if we're going to go that route, the focus should entirely be Palpatine sort of manipulating his way to power, to Chancellor by the end of the movie.
You mean all the, 20 subplots in the movie?
A thing I would defend, by the way. So I know I said C-3PO, his placement in this universe, is ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. It's dumb. But I would say that R2, the reveal of R2-D2, is kind of fun. And I think R2-D2, his role in the whole series is kind of to be present in all of these events, even though he shouldn't be there. And I thought kind of the reveal that, oh, look, this droid who's helping out Naboo, of course it's R2-D2, because R2-D2 is going to be navigating his way through this adventure, because for some reason he's comically placed in the middle of it. And I thought that was actually kind of a charming coincidence.
That's
in the
fair.
prequels.
It was less, manipulated.
Well, maybe it might just be because he's so less annoying than C3.
It.
So it's more, you're more forgiving. But going back to that, there were so many, pandering to the hardcore fans. Like bringing up it was one of the very first lines was, I have a bad feeling about this. It was the third line in the
I
movie.
thought that was charming, too.
Really, just get it out of the way?
Yeah, it's fun.
I don't know.
Well, I think the ultimate problem in the movie is that George Lucas tries to create this world that's very similar to the old trilogy, but it can't because of the long time span between them and all the new technological advances. And so they're so different of worlds that he tries to just force his way into this one with all these lines or these references or characters in there. And it's just, it doesn't work because it's just so forced.
And stuff is inserted like a clever wink, fans.
Yeah.
There you go. But it's almost like throwing scraps to dogs. Here.
Like Darth Vader breathing at the end of the credits.
You're going to lose your crap.
And I did. Yeah. I totally did when I watched the first time when I watched it. Not when I watched it the other day. At the very end of the credits, you hear the...
Oh, do you really?
Yeah.
I never stuck through that.
Oh, really? Hey, everyone. Sorry to interrupt. Sam here. Oh, well, we had a glitch with the audio. There's about a 15-minute chunk of the podcast that it just sounds awful. So I'm afraid I had to edit it out. Okay, well, back to the part that does sound okay.
Well, and then why don't you just make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 like that instead of doing 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3?
Well, because 4, 5, 6 are vastly superior stories and films.
I will say there's one. This is a controversial.
Well, I mean, if he had started in the 70s with that, then he might have better films.
And that goes to what you said earlier. You said that was part of his problem was going back in the past and making the prequels. But he damned himself to that the instant he put up that episode 4.
Oh yeah.
Because there's no way he would. If people would have, we wouldn't want to see 7. We want to no, show us what happened. Little did we know what happened was lame.
I actually don't know the truth to this. I know A New Hope was a title added after its theatrical run.
Right.
Was Episode 4 added after its theatrical run?
I believe that was part of it, because that's part of the
That's
beginning
interesting.
crawl.
It's part of the original.
Yeah, that's part of the beginning epilogue. And
Oh, really?
nope. What's the other? Not an epilogue. The interlogue, if you will.
Prologue.
Prologue. Thank you.
Because A New Hope was added, was
Right.
not in the original, the
That's
run,
correct.
in the opening scroll. And
That's
it's there now. So,
Is it now?
yeah.
Oh, okay. I feel
So-
like episode 4 was a
Really?
part of it. Was it not? Is that?
I could be wrong. I maybe I heard it was about New Hope, but I thought it was added to. But I could be
See,
wrong.
if I were to go into a book and I read something like that, I wouldn't necessarily think, oh, I need to know the other 3 ahead of this, you know? And I think that in pop culture, we're presented with things like that. We don't necessarily know the
That's why there was
origin
no.
stories.
That's not why there was no 1 Jump Street and 2 Jump Street,
Uh-huh.
etc. They just started with 21.
I don't blame them for that. Like, Star Wars New Hope does begin in the middle of the story. Like, we're in the middle of this imbroglio with the rebels and the now Empire. And so it is coming into a world established right in the middle of this big conflict. And so there was certainly stuff happening before that would be interesting to hear about. I would be even interested to hear about, but the problem was he did not have an episode 1, 2, and 3. He had some big ideas about this guy became evil. And...
Actually, I just kind of remembered it was because much like Raiders of the Lost Ark, it was supposed to be like the those Saturday matinee serials.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it was supposed to be like you just happen to pop into the theater and here's 4, and you didn't see 1, 2, or 3, but you're still gonna have a good time. So yeah, I think maybe he did have it up the whole time.
Well, according to the documentary features, the special edition, or the special features on the DVDs, he sure makes it sound like he really wanted to make those prequels from the start.
And I would believe it, but just, it feels like he wanted to make them, but didn't start thinking about, oh crap, I have to actually write a story for them until like the week before the paper was due.
And I think one of the most egregious continuity problems between the original series and the prequels, especially for someone who's gone back and connected so much detail, this is not a Phantom Menace problem. This is, no, it isn't. Is in Return of the Jedi when Luke asks Leia to tell them about their mom, and she tells him about her mom.
Mm-hmm. She has some
remember that.
vague stuff that she kind of vaguely remembers her mother, who died when she was born.
Yeah, so
Maybe she was told stories, and you know how sometimes you remember stories.
but she doesn't know.
might
She
she
doesn't
be
know
talking-
that Padme is her mom,
Did
right?
we think she's talking about Jimmy Smith's
Oh,
wife?
That's what I assumed.
Okay.
Yeah,
That makes sense then.
Here is a big continuity error, though.
sure.
In Episode 5, Yoda doesn't want to train Luke because he's too old. And Obi-Wan Kenobi said something like, oh, he was not that much older from when I started training, or something like that. It's like, really? No. You had to have been
that's
younger
very
than
interesting.
10-year-old Jake Lloyd to do
Because
that.
Jake Lloyd was too old. I never thought of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say, watching them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 makes it easier to stomach one of the big cosmic coincidences from the original trilogies that I always found a little hard to swallow, and this is controversial potentially, which is that Luke and Leia are twin siblings, and that is kind of thrown at you in Return of the Jedi with no prompting. And if you watch 1, 2, 3 and you kind of watch how those kids are distributed throughout the universe, it would make more sense to see them come back together later on.
I see what you mean. And then, of course, there is this force which we now know is
Yeah.
intelligence.
The midichlorians.
It's
brought us
not,
together.
I don't think it's
Okay.
necessarily a strong enough argument for the existence of the prequels in their current state, but
It all comes together now.
Even though it does work in the George Lucas, who does believe that he is writing space opera, and that's why this is all grand and huge and not realistic. It is a very operatic storyline.
It is.
That, of course, the twins would find each other.
Yeah. You want to wrap things up, shall we? Well. Oh,
Do we
yeah.
want to go around
So-
for, like, closing statements? Or you
Well, actually, before we do, though,
Please.
I have good news.
What?
I know we're a brand new podcast and
Yeah.
everything. We have a sponsor.
get
What?
out of here.
Yeah,
Seriously?
seriously.
That's gonna be awesome. Can we get out of Bobby's room and, like, get a studio? The money?
Let's.
Am I going to be famous?
Yes, to all of the above. And we're going to hear the commercial right now. Hi there. Do you like stuff? Well, have I got a stuff for you. My name is Sam Bowen. You might know me from the podcast that you are listening to right now, the one I interrupted for this commercial. That's right, In Defense of Bad Movies. Well, I'm here to tell you about a podcast you should totally listen to. It's called In Defense of Bad Movies. If you like the podcast you're listening to now, I predict that you will like the podcast I am currently advertising just as much, if not more. No, I take that last bit back. Just as much. In Defense of Bad Movies, we discuss movies that, you know what, it's kind of hard to explain. just listen to the podcast. Or as soon as this commercial is over, continue listening to the podcast you're listening to right now. It's remarkably similar. In fact, it's the same one. You can download In Defense of Bad Movies by, well, however you downloaded this podcast, In Defense of Bad Movies. Actually, you probably already downloaded it, so just continue to listen. Thanks for listening. To this commercial, that is, not the podcast. I mean, thanks for listening to the podcast, too, but I'm not officially thanking you for that just now. I'll thank you for that later, if you listen, which it seems as though you are, and unless I forget, in which case, thanks for listening to the podcast. But in the meanwhile, I'm thanking you for listening to this commercial. Now back to me, Sam Bowen, host of In Defense of Bad Movies. Hey, that's the podcast I'm advertising.
I cannot believe we scored them as a sponsor. That is amazing.
It was quite the get.
It's yeah, you know,
we're headed to the top, guys.
Yeah,
it's kind of risky, you know, startup and everything. But I hear they're going places. So
in other news, we're actually sponsoring this very podcast. So
what?
Yeah,
We sponsor ourselves?
Yeah. So
how much do we owe you for that?
we'll just call it even.
Okay.
I'll just direct deposit it into the bank bank account that it came from.
Are we ready for closing? Or?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Let's just say, what has anyone's Lauren, now after listening to Bobby's impassioned argument, what do you say?
I will actually be fair. It is nice to speak to someone who can enjoy the movie even with all its flaws. And it does make me want to meet you somewhere in the middle, even though my experience of the movie was not good. I really feel that for a few good points, by and large, too long, too boring. I, with half an hour left, was so ready to quit last night. And
we didn't even watch it last night. That's how...
But I can appreciate if I meet someone who's a fan. I won't just think like, "Oh, you dummy, why would you be so dumb?" Like, okay, you're right. If you can shut off and just enjoy what it is, sure. Not my cup of tea, but I respect you.
Okay, that was very fair. How about Bobby? Did you change your mind on it?
I still think this movie is among the best ever made. No, yes, this movie has plenty of flaws, a lot of flaws, and it feels ridiculous to say, you know, in spite of, I mean, really, all you have to say is, in spite of Jar Jar Binks, this movie's alright. I think this was one of the first movies that I noticed getting a lot of people dogpiling on it. And I think it wasn't as bad as everyone made it out to be. There's a lot of potential, and there's a lot to like in this movie that I don't think is present in the other prequel movies. But it's certainly not a perfect film. There's a lot to kind of laugh at, as we kind of have been doing during this podcast, myself included.
How about you, Laura? You've been fairly quiet.
I don't feel like I can say a lot since I'm not a big connoisseur of the movie.
Oh, I beg to differ.
I haven't seen all of them, so I did say it was shitty before. I don't know if I can say that on this podcast. You might have to bleep that out. But
we'll check with our advertising sponsors. Yeah, they might frown upon that.
I the first time I saw it, as I said, I fell asleep, and
and the second time you wish you had.
The second time, I really did wish I had. It was a little bit more engaging this time. I can maybe see where, you know, I think some points were brought up where there were some interesting parts to it. The whole fighting scene at Darth Maul and Liam Neeson's character and Obi-Wan, I think that scene was not as great as everyone was talking about earlier. So to me, it wasn't as engaging. Like certain parts like that wasn't as engaging to me as other people. So I still think it's not very good movie. That's putting it nicely. But I like always. I respect everyone else's opinion. But
you don't have to do that.
But for me, this movie is.
I think in order to make this podcast work, we all have to hate each other a little bit more.
Laura, you ignorant slut. No, I think I bring to a lot of nostalgia to it. So there's a lot I forgive, and is it flawed? Absolutely. But it has its fun parts. And there was something I wanted to say earlier too that I'm sorry I forgot. The fight, the Qui-Gon Jinn.
Qui-Gon Jinn.
Yeah, that's okay. Darth Maul fight. One moment that I really liked in that, and it does have a lot of little subtle things that I like. when those little shields come up and Qui-Gon Jinn can't get to Darth Maul, he stops and he does like a little meditation thing.
That's great.
Yeah, I really love that.
Well, it almost was, I thought at that point he was going to get killed, and he was just waiting for it and kind of accepting it, and it was kind of a foreshadowing moment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can't remember if I knew he was going to get killed in that scene. I feel like I did know, or maybe it was just kind of paced where it looked like he was heading into that scene where it was like, okay, I'm gonna,
that's interesting. I don't see it that way. However, I could see Lucas having that in mind, especially after in episode 4, the moment where
Obi-Wan turns his lightsaber off.
Yeah, where he just accepts that, okay, this is it. So yeah, I think it's a valid argument.
Do you think Qui-Gon was really excited? Like, I'm going to get struck down. I'm going to come back more powerful than ever. And he doesn't, and he must be so frustrated.
Yeah. On the other hand,
he does.
He says something in 2 or 3
episode 3.
He has that really bad line.
Yeah.
I need to
one
rewatch this.
where he
It's a
goes
throwaway line with Yoda.
after he gets
He says a
killed
couple
by
things.
Darth Maul, and then Obi-Wan finally gets to him, and he goes, "It's too late," and then it just dies. And it was a pretty bad moment for Liam Neeson.
I will say that fight also starts the recurring trend of Obi-Wan dangling off the edge of something and then jumping back on and winning the fight, which I think he does in every fight after that.
And it's a good move, though, because Darth Maul just stares at him like, what? How'd you get out of that? I'm going to let you cut me in half. That was the weakest part of the fight.
That is.
Yeah.
It's so uncharacteristic of Darth Maul as we know him up to that point.
Of hubris.
He's got very quick reactions. And Anyway, so, do you have anything to plug, anyone? Lauren, excuse me. I think you've got something coming up. You've got your play.
We're really plugging things.
I think we should
Our
absolutely
little
plug something.
insignificant lives. Oh, okay. Why, yes, I'm going to be in 12th Night at the Long Beach Playhouse, opening on September 6th, running through October 4th. The shows are Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Tickets are available at the box office on our website. And it's community theater, but we're all having a lot of fun, and you should go support.
How about you guys, Laura? Bobby, you have anything to plug?
Yes, I will be in the Vagina Monologues at the Pantages next month. But if you would like, you could follow me on Twitter at Bob Mattern.
I don't really have anything to plug, but you can follow me on Twitter. I think my handle is KingL15. I think that's my name. But you can always find me on Facebook, Laura King.
Because you started your account when you were 15 years old. So.
No, not really.
Okay, you guys have, the three of us, Bobby, Laura, and me, we're writers. That
is true.
We can throw out champagne for breakfast, which I'm not exactly sure the address.
I don't even think we can find champagne for breakfast anymore.
You know what, then? Don't look for champagne for breakfast. No, I thought we could. I thought if you looked it up on Google, well, whatever, we'll figure it out later.
This is your literary newsletter. You're saying you can't get to it online?
No, I'm not sure exactly how. We'll figure it out by next episode.
It's first episode, guys. Come on. Give us a break.
Give us a break.
This is weird figuring out all the bugs.
And I'm on @Sambowen_Comedy. This is Twitter, although I don't really do anything. I am in a troupe, The Upperclassmen. We've got a show coming in October. Don't have a date, but, look for that. We also play out at Long Beach Playhouse.
What's special about
Okay,
that show?
my Twitter handle is King_Laura15.
King Laura.
You're way off.
I was on.
And yeah, if you come to this Upperclassmen show, the performers, that is, will be drunk in the show. So
and
that
if the
should
audience
be.
is drunk too, that helps.
Yeah, that will be there. There will be bar served. It's an open bar, in that the bar will be open, but you do have to pay for it. So I think that about does it. Anything else you guys want to say?
I think this is a lot of fun. I think we picked a great first episode. Drove a lot of conversation.
I think so too. I'd like to thank the Urban Voodoo Machine. They're a great band out of London. They provided our theme music, and I think that should do it.
And if I wanted to buy Urban Voodoo songs, where would I go?
You could go to iTunes. They are on that. I believe they have a website too. And they're on Facebook. Just, Google them. There's not many. If you put in Urban Voodoo Machine into Google, there's not a lot of different things that come up. So, anyway, to close out, again, my name is Sam Bowen.
I'm Lauren, and I have a bad feeling about this.
I'm Laura, and I'll see you guys next time.
And I'm Bobby.
Thank you guys so much for listening. Tune in when we do our next podcast.
And George Lucas is a shithead.
Indeed.
Think of that.